Okay. What program are you guys using? Okay. Yeah, because we have like a restream, like a premium restream package that I was using for the daily show that I used to. I think you can use OBS through it, because I really wanted to start doing more like on-screen graphics and stuff. Oh, there we go. Like like the pardon the interruption type. Yeah. I used to love that. And then they cover the Vikings for 15 seconds, go to commercial, you know?
It's kind of weird on mine sometimes too. Like it wants me to share it through our LTB page rather than personally, which
Where you gonna post it on?
it'll go on our Twitter too, right, Jordan? I think.
So I can retweet it. Oh, I see it. Yeah. I think the best times in these shows are the down times, the awkward times. That's when I thrive.
We can be heard, I think.
I
I just opened it, but I don't think it's a huge deal.
I'm more worried about that little creepy dude on the lower right coming to life and
On
killing
Jordan.
George. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's got a bunch of them back there.
Things peering into my soul. I actually have a really dope background, but it's like under construction because I almost have too much stuff at this point. Oh yeah, I see the nutcrackers back there. Is that a Mr. Potato Head? That is so cool, man. And I have a surprisingly good eye. Okay. So it's I think it's illegal to ship liquor or to mail liquor to people, but I want to get you a bottle of like an autographed Chad Greenway Grey Duck. So
That'd be sweet.
I have like 50 of those. Let's do it.
Complete. And we're live. It's Jordan Hawthorne, joined by Jack Day and Joe Johnson. And Joe, you being on has thrown off my groove completely because usually, just for consistency's sake, I start the show off by saying, "All right, everybody, welcome in to Load the Box. I'm your host, Jordan Hawthorne. I'm joined by Jack Day, as always, but this week we do have a little bit of a special guest, owner of Vikings territory, Purple PTSD, about 6,000 other extremely well run and put together websites. We have Joe Johnson. So, Joe, I will give you the flow to kind of just talk about how your week's been, how you enjoying beating the Packers, and are the Vikings making the playoffs?
Ooh, that's a doozy of a question. Hey, everybody, I'm glad to be here. First and foremost, my goal is to always throw people off their game. It's one of my only talents, so I'm glad that I was able to do that. Things are good in Vikings land, man. Like I feel, well, it depends on your definition, I guess, of good. But anytime we beat the Packers, you would think would be a good thing. But I'm seeing there's a decent enough percentage to make it newsworthy of people who I think were upset we beat the Packers for draft reasons, which let's face it, we're never going to end up getting the number one overall pick. It would just wouldn't happen. And if we did, that person would die in a spontaneous combustion or something. It just would never work out.
Yeah, the knee would fall off.
Yeah, a la Teddy Bridgewater or
Yeah.
Dante Culpepper. So I anytime you beat the Packers to the point that Aaron Rodgers has to make conspiracy theory takes after the game about the refs getting a call from New York to screw over their chances, I think that's 100% a win for us. Just knowing that it brought Rodgers to that point, which boo-hoo, man.
Yeah, I agree with you that it is kind of boo-hoo. Like, you look at historically, literally, friend of the show, Brett Coleman, he does film breakdowns on YouTube. Go check out his YouTube channel after you subscribe and Load the Boxes, of course. He did a breakdown, and the video is literally called "How the Packers Get Away with Holding on Every Single Play."
Yeah.
And like the offensive line, I mean, they say holding could be called on every play. It's atrocious in Green Bay, and the fact that calls were going our way, I was pleasantly surprised. But you know, we covered that in last week's show. We will get to the Detroit Lions, but
To answer your question about the playoffs, will they make the playoffs? They very well could. I guess, with the expanded wild card thing. But the question is whether or not it makes sense to do it. I mean, I think that the fact that we're talking about it is a good sign, which makes me trend a little bit more towards maybe this year being a 1-year blip or a growing pains thing that they can build on. Versus it being the unmitigated disaster we all thought it was, a week ago. So I think things are trending up, which is really all we can ask for at this point.
Absolutely. And being a Minnesota fan, I don't live in Minnesota. I don't love all Minnesota teams. So, Jack, you'll be able to attest to this, Mo. But just loving the Vikings the way that I do, I know that as soon as I start feeling hope, that's usually about the time everything comes crashing down. So, Jack, as always, I'm gonna ask you, man, how's your week been, or since we last talked on Sunday?
Yeah, it's been a busy week, but it's anytime you can go into the week. I know what kind of going back to what Joe said, it seems like the fan base is kind of divided. I don't know if I would say it's down the middle, but just seeing guys and people on Twitter going back and forth saying, you know what, we want Justin Fields or we want Trevor Lawrence, or do we want to make the playoffs? And it's just an intriguing thing to look at, especially this year, because you can go back to that Seattle game and you can go back to that Tennessee game. There's a couple games in there where this Vikings team could very well not be a 2-5 football team. Like, they have the potential. And we also saw in Green Bay, I'd argue probably one of the best offensive line games that we've seen over the last couple of years as well. And I know that's something that Joe has touched on some in his writing over the past, with the Vikings kind of not necessarily investing quite enough at the position, but it was really good seeing Ezra Cleveland. And I'm not ready to say he made the step, because it was one good game out of him. I know PFF had him graded fairly well. I think it was in the low 80s, I want to say.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a positive thing. I mean, we've been talking so much Delvin Cook, so much Justin Jefferson. The defense is banged up, obviously, but it's fun to almost witness that transformation that we've been kind of hoping for over the last 3-4 years, ever since we got Kirk Cousins. I mean, the offensive line wasn't fantastic with Case either. And I think that's what made Case special, was he'd make some of those plays where Jordan calls them YOLO balls, where he's outside of the pocket. He just kind of hucks it up, and Diggs or Dino will come down with it. But yeah, I'm in the part of the fan base where I can completely understand wanting that high draft pick, but anytime you can go into Monday morning, a work week, after a Vikings win in Lambeau Field, it's going to be a good week.
Yeah, man, you're right. I mean, I if there's one topic that I've written about the most outside of maybe defending Kirk Cousins to the point of getting a restraining order from him and his family, is the offensive line. It's just been driving me crazy. I since really 2016, I always took umbrage with the people like, "It's more bad luck. The offensive line fell apart after the bye, started 5-0, ended up missing the playoffs or whatever." That was not really the case. I mean, they brought in two guys that were over 30 and injury prone, and what do those guys do? They're over 30 and they're injury prone. They get injured. That's an investment problem, not a luck problem. But I think the top three graded PFF players from the Packers game were all Vikings offensive linemen. Riley Reif had the highest grade. Ezra Cleveland, and then Brian O'Neill. And so it's interesting because if you look at like the Monday night game against Green Bay last year, Zadarius Smith almost single-handedly like destroyed the Vikings offensive game plan. He was like in the backfield before the ball was even snapped half the time. So it raises a cool question to me is, a lot of people have still talk about Ezra Cleveland as the left tackle of the future, but if he keeps this up, it's going to be hard to move him from guard. And especially if they have the Vikings end up with a top 5 or top 10 pick that they don't use on a quarterback, then that tends to historically be left tackle territory, depending on what happens with Riley Reif, who had, again, the highest grade. So props to Ezra Cleveland in that regard. Hopefully, Elflein can come back and actually play well at right guard. They can maybe flip him to Cleveland to left guard. And, oh, my God, we might have a decent offensive line and actually see what Cousins could have done in 2018 and 2019 had they actually invested in the line in either of those drafts.
That's a good point. I know a name that Jack likes to throw out. It's Wyatt Davis, isn't it? The guard from Ohio State.
Ohio State, yep.
Yeah, Wyatt Davis is a guy who you look at the Vikings. Currently, we pick at 10. Obviously, that's going to change. We're either going to win some, lose some. The draft is not set in stone right now, but Wyatt Davis is a guy where it's like, do we draft a guard and we run this thing back with, the offensive line as is, only sub in, an elite guard prospect for Dakota Dojo? And I think Wyatt Davis, from what I've heard and from what I've seen, his lows seem to be about Dakota Dojo, median, and then his highs could be an elite guard play. And then all of a sudden we tone into the Tennessee Titans where we have, the ability to actually run. Mike Zimmer wants to play 17-12 football, run the ball control, play defense. And
time of possession.
Yeah, exactly. And time of possession is what killed us early on in the year. And I think, the Titans, everybody made the joke, the Titans are the team the Vikings want to be. They play time of possession. Their quarterback does enough without making key mistakes. They play good defense. I think that, we're about one offensive lineman away from doing that. And I'm always a fan of going offensive lineman high. But this show is pretty much completely sold on Zach Wilson. He is the quarterback of the future, and he's just, he's everything. It's like that movie Draft Day when it says, whatever his name is, no matter what. It's like Zach Wilson, no matter what, get it done, draft him, trade up, get him on this team, cut Cousins. I want to take one quick second to do a couple things. One, I want to shout out Amy Lamont for saying she's the #1 fan. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. And Nathan Nickel says, I thought y'all went live on Sundays. Nathan, you're from Lebanon, Ohio. Stop saying y'all. And also, we go live on Wednesdays and Sundays. It's a live show now. It's what it is. We have high production value.
That's right.
But thank you as well for tuning in. Thank anybody that's watching right now for tuning in. And while you're listening to us talk, go ahead, hop on another device, whether that's your iPad, whether that is your computer, whether that's your phone. Go ahead, head on over to twitter.com. Give us a follow at LTB Vikings. One more time, that is at LTB, like the logo right here would suggest. Give us a follow there. Go over to, let's see, still staying on Twitter, you can follow Jack at Jack_H_day. One more time, at Jack_H_day. You can follow myself at JHawthorne16. That's at JHawthorne16, no E on Hawthorne. Joe, what is your Twitter information? Go ahead and plug yourself, man.
It is at VT, like Vikings territory, PTSD. So all one word, VT, PTSD, like post-traumatic stress disorder, for the two sites, essentially.
Absolutely.
Twitter.
Man. So go on over, follow that. And here we go. Let's see. Let's stay on this playoffs thing. Because I do want to kind of talk about it, and then we'll get fully into this Lions game. I want to hear from each of you guys about what you realistically think this Vikings team ceiling is. You look at the rest of the schedule. We play the rest of our games. How many games do we have left? What are we? Well, 2-5, so we have 9 games left. So we have 9 games left. 8 of those games are in a dome, and the outside game is in Tampa Bay. So you look at the schedule, which I don't have it pulled up. I don't have a fancy graphic or anything, but you look at the schedule. We have Detroit twice. We have Chicago twice. We have the Saints, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, and then Carolina, and some other 9th team. Oh, that actually might have been the 9th team, but you look at the remaining schedule. I view this team as being, I said on Sunday, me and Nathan.
Cowboys, that's
who it is. So the Cowboys, who, are stouting. I like to joke that they are stouting Anthony Fauci at quarterback. Is this team? Do they have the potential to end the season with 10 or 11 wins? Like, I know it's improbable. I know it's impossible. But we'll start with Jack. Jack, what do you think this team realistically finishes without going game by game and picking? But what are your expectations?
It's so tough to say because we've seen a tale of 2 different stories throughout the season so far. We've seen a team that comes in and gets absolutely blown out by a winless Atlanta team at home in a dome. And then the following week, they go into Green Bay after their bye, where Mike Zimmer is usually not good after the bye. And it was outdoors. It was a colder game, and they go out and they embarrass the Green Bay Packers, who before that game were one of the front runners of the NFC. So I think the NFC is just very tough in itself. I think I could see a legitimate scenario where 3 out of the 4 teams in the NFC West make it too. That division, I think, is stacked. The NFC South with the Saints, Tampa Bay, both of those teams as well. I just feel like this Vikings season has that feel to it where they might string a couple games together and might get the hopes up of some of their fan base, and then it's going to be not necessarily crash and burn, but it's just, I don't think with how slow they got off to the season, I don't think it's really realistic that they could. I mean, they definitely could make the playoffs because their schedule isn't super hard.
And there's an extra playoff team.
That's true. There's 7 this year, but I'm still at the point where I feel like this is at best 8-8 team, 7-9, which could potentially get you in there, but you have to start weighing the options and looking, like I said, at the NFC West. I think there's a very legitimate chance that we see the Cardinals and we see Seattle, both the Rams and San Fran. They're not, I mean, they've regressed a little bit, but neither of them are bad.
I think you could see either of them in the playoff, though.
For sure, especially with that extra spot. I could see either of them over us right now. But then again, if you start to see, I'm still worried about this defense with the secondary. It's very young. It's very injured still. And we saw a lot better performance out of the defensive line in the first game without Yannick Ngakoue, which I thought was really weird. We saw DJ Wanham play or get that last sack. Obviously, if you're a Vikings fan and you haven't seen the picture of him absolutely crushing Aaron Rodgers from behind, then I don't know if you're a Vikings fan or not. But
do you want me to get it? I have it on my phone.
To answer that question, I probably went a little bit long, but I don't see this team making the playoffs, but I think that could very well change if we see a defensive performance like we saw. But like you said, a lot of their games are in a dome moving forward, and that scares me a little bit with our secondary. I think a big part of the reason we just lost to the Green Bay Packers is because there was 30, 40-mile-an-hour winds and Aaron Rodgers.
I was going to bring that. Ask you guys if you thought of what you thought about that theory.
He didn't really have the chance. And I mean, I don't know. I with our offensive line performance last week, it excites me because we haven't seen that yet. And if the offensive line continues to play like that, maybe we will start stringing a few more games together. We're seeing teams like Tampa Bay, who just had a close game with the Giants, out of anyone, the Giants, an NFC East team. These teams are beatable, and the Vikings just went out and beat arguably one of the best teams in the NFC. So I could see it happening, but to answer the question, I just don't have a lot of faith in this team making the playoffs. Mainly, I shouldn't say this because I say it every year, but it's an even year, and in the Mike Zimmer era, they don't make the playoffs in even years.
Let me just throw out, though, really quick. I forgot I was asking pessimistic Jack about that because, Joe, it's a running joke here on the show that Jack is usually very optimistic about things. And I think, was it the Falcons game or was it the Seattle game that just killed you? I mean, I've been afraid for you for a little bit here, man. Really quickly, do want to bring up this little photo. I know it looks like crap, but you can just kind of feel Aaron Rodgers' pain in the photo. And it was such
I'm
a
gonna
beautiful
get that
thing.
as a lower back tattoo.
It's so good. It's such a good. I mean, lower back tattoo. What are you talking about? Get one of those full back like Battle of the Alamo tattoos, but just of Aaron Rodgers just getting destroyed. Really quick, Jeff Hawthorne, who is my father, says we're gonna go 9-7, be the 7 seed, make the Super Bowl. Didn't say win the Super Bowl, just said make the Super Bowl.
Like the Giants in 2007.
I mean, this could be, and Pittsburgh is undefeated. We could be the 2007 Giants going in. David Goliath, Cousins. Unfortunately, we'd end up signing Cousins long term, which Joe, it sounds like you're a Cousins guy, so I don't want to get into that debate because last time I got in this debate, it was with another guy in the chat. Chris Land says, "What's up, guys?" Chris, thanks for coming, hanging out, watching along. Joe, now we can move on to your tone with this question.
Sure.
Vikings playoffs, man.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen. I mean, to be completely honest with you, the way I look at it is I'm still trying to determine whether or not this Vikings team is one of those teams that plays up to their opponent, which happens in sports from time to time. You play against a good team, you play a lot better. You're more hyped for that. Then when you have a down week, especially after like a loss that like this young defense had against Seattle, you're emotionally just wiped. You just get, destroyed by a team you otherwise should beat because everyone else is beating them. But I don't necessarily think that's what this team is doing. I do think that when it comes to how they've played against the Packers and the Seahawks and how they've been able to stymie two guys who are having arguably, well, not the best year in his career in Aaron Rodgers, but certainly a renaissance. People are talking about MVP for him. People are saying that Russell Wilson's finally going to get an MVP. He's playing better than he ever has. It can't just be the fact that in Seattle they had two deep safeties the entire time. Russell Wilson is better than that. I think that in some of these games, Zimmer is doing things that he hasn't done because when he has his guys like he had in 2018 and 2019, he likes to beat teams more straight up than run more exotic blitzes and different looks than
Right.
he usually does. I think he's been forced in these games to do different looks and run safety and corner blitzes more. We saw Gladney had a couple against the Packers, and I think that's been the case. And I said this after the Seahawks game, like, is this what we could have had if Zimmer just was a little less by the book these last couple of seasons, considering the talent we had position by position on those defenses? I don't know. But when it comes to the offense, I do think that there's a lot to actually think that they could make a run with, considering what we've said about the offensive line. Considering Justin Jefferson's emergence, obviously, the only really key factor for me and not really wanting to say what the record will be or if they'll make the playoffs is I'm a little worried whether Dalvin Cook can continue to amass 30 plus touches every single week. Hopefully they can mitigate that a little bit with Madison, who's shown maybe not as the premier back, but when he comes in late in games, the defenses wore down because of Cook, he can pick up chunk yardage. If they can protect Cousins, me being a Cousins guy, I think I'm just a little more nuanced with these things. I was also labeled a Teddy hater because I was nuanced there and saying, it's not a zero-sum game. He's not either elite or terrible. Cousins, I think a lot of people who didn't want him here in the first place are quick to now look back because he's had a bad season and say, well, he was awful in 2019 and 2018. That just really wasn't the case. He had 6 interceptions last year. And sure, he's getting overpaid, but that's more on the business side of things. I didn't think they should have extended him going into a rebuild. That's a different conversation as well. But I think the point is that Cousins is the second most accurate quarterback in NFL history by a full percentage point over the guy that's in third place. And that isn't just because he's been 100% in garbage time and terrible otherwise. So if you can protect him or at least give him time by virtue of maybe getting him out of the pocket more, he can do things. I don't know how people have this cognitive dissonance of saying, well, the Vikings have the most explosive plays of any team in the NFL this year. Justin Jefferson's emerged. Look how great things are, but they've removed Cousins from that equation because he's had some bad picks. Also some picks that were bounced off the hands of his receivers, that at least 2 of those. So
and a couple Hail Marys as well that I don't count as well.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So I'm not saying he's elite, that he's great, that he should be getting 45 million guaranteed at all. I don't understand why you'd extend him under these circumstances. But what I'm saying is, if you give him time, as we saw from week 5 on last season, he can do some things that we haven't seen from a quarterback here really since Brett Favre. That's just an objective fact. I mean, he was in the MVP conversation from week 5 on last season. He did have like a 6 or 7 game stretch where his numbers were almost identical to Patrick Mahomes' numbers from 2018 in terms of QBR, completion percentage, touchdown to interception ratio, so on and so forth. So can you win with this offense as currently comprised? Yes. And I think that's why we didn't see any trades yesterday, because maybe the rate of return wouldn't have been enough. But when you have a guy like Kyle Rudolph who catches 80% of the balls you throw his way, especially in the red zone, and you have Dalvin Cook playing like a man possessed, as long as his defense can hold up a little bit, and Zimmer can throw in some exotic blitzes here and there because he knows every trick in the book, and Dom Capers is still around, I think, hiding in some chest or some hidden room in TCO with Nate Kading, the kicking coach. I think that this team very well could make a run, but I agree with Jack in regards to it maybe being 7-9, 8-8 sort of situation.
So I think 7-9 is the basement of this team. I think I said that going into the year, and me and Jack spoke about this last week, about how I think we watched too many highlights of Justin Jefferson, and we got a little too excited about this upcoming season. Me and Jack were kind of preaching, or at least I was, going into this season. It was like, yeah, it's a rebuilding year. I think we're going to go, 7-9, 8-8. We'll probably miss the playoffs, and then draft, reload, and the next year is the year when things are going to kick off. And then we started looking awful, and all of a sudden Twitter went from agreeing with that statement of sorry, just got a notification from Zoom. Twitter went from agreeing with that statement of, yeah, this is going to be a down year, mediocre, run-of-the-mill type year, to this team is awful, fire everyone, no one deserves a job, Dalvin Cook's a bust, just outlandish hot takes for the sake of having a hot take.
Trade Thielen.
Oh my God, the trade Thielen thing killed me. Don't get me wrong, I would trade every single person on this team right now. You got to pay me the right amount of draft capital and players, I think Cleveland probably did inquire about Adam Thielen. I'm not an NFL insider, but it wouldn't surprise me if Stefanski, made some calls, probably wanted to talk, and was probably like, how about Adam Thielen? You don't have a second round pick. And Rick Spielman, just did that, that meme of that guy who's laughing as he's getting in the taxi, and he's like, ha, 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 and just went and kind of hung up the phone like, Kevin, love you. You got some, we need 2 1s for Adam Thielen. He's elite. So I do think this team has the potential to go 9-7 or 10-6. It's just like Joe said, showing up every week and playing Detroit without Matthew Stafford, which we're about to get into, playing them the same way that you play Green Bay or Seattle or Tennessee. I will also acknowledge that was a brutal opening schedule. I mean, Green Bay twice, Tennessee, Seattle, that is not a fun schedule. Houston, who I know we beat, but Houston's not an easy team to beat. I think they're playing a lot better without Bill O'Brien. Who was that other? The Colts. The Colts look really good, though. Defense looks outstanding. Xavier Rhodes playing out of his mind. Sometimes I wish I had him back, but then, I see a guy go down. It was funny. It's number 29. I can't remember. Was that Fields?
Mark Fields?
Yeah. Fields, hurt his calf or his knee in that Packers game.
No, he got a punctured lung.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, he got spiked in the chest by a cleat.
Who am I thinking of? Somebody hurt their knee and they fell down, and Devontae Adams caught a ball.
I think it was Chris Boyd.
Maybe it was Chris Boyd.
Hurt.
But I just saw the Viking laying there after getting beaten, and I was just like, memories of Xavier Rhodes. Obviously he's not faking his injury, but it was just memories of big play for the opposing team. The Vikings corner is hurt, and it's just, I don't know.
That's a little bit of a tangent, but I look at that Xavier Rhodes thing and say, okay, well, they're doing more zone stuff than man-to-man, right? That's why Xavier Rhodes looks better, because he has a lot more help. Yeah. But it makes you wonder, if Zimmer was just too stubborn, like I said earlier, to maybe switch things up because he had all of his guys in place, and we could have, because that was really the only Achilles heel this defense had last year was Rhodes, was just god awful. He'd give up a huge play every week, and then he would start on fire. Or some weird thing would happen, and he'd blame it on that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just it's a little frustrating to see him do so well because he's just turned 30. But I mean, I guess that's why we use every first round pick on a corner.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we go Kono this year. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, like especially we make the playoffs. If we make the playoffs, I don't think Cousins is going anywhere. Like I think we are going to firmly plant our feet on the Cousins train. And look, Cousins, I expect him to play incredibly well the rest of the season. I really do. He's in a dome 8 weeks out of the next 9, and then he plays in Tampa Bay. And if he plays bad against Tampa Bay, it's Tampa Bay. It's the team of destiny and all that. They've got Antonio Brown out there.
He's like the best. I mean, him and Russell Wilson are like the 1A and the 1B for
Exactly.
play action quarterbacks, right? So you have Dalvin Cook playing this way. What does that tell you? We're going to do a ton of play action stuff. Justin Jefferson has been a little quiet these last couple weeks. I could see him coming out even more. Irv Smith Jr. has been playing better.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be excited about, and it's been a complete roller coaster though. I mean, every week it's either hey, playoffs, or oh my god,
Yep.
let's refinance US Bank Stadium and sell it to this, the Minnesota
Right, yeah,
United
sell
or
the
something.
stadium and move the team to England and become the London Knights or whatever the generic team name is going to be whenever
The
they move
Saxons.
Jacksonville. So anyway, moving on from that, we did, we've talked for a while about non-Lions game stuff on a video called Lions Edition. So let's go ahead, Jack. Let's get into who's playing, who's not playing on Sunday. I know, and I'll spoil this one. Matthew Stafford, starting quarterback, obviously. I think everybody got the notification. He got put on the COVID list today. Jack.
That's what it was?
Yeah, it's the COVID list. That's why. So I don't know if he has COVID. If he,
I don't think he does. I saw a tweet late or a little bit earlier that said that it was more of the Cameron Dantzler situation where they think he was around somebody. And it sounded like they already flew him to Minnesota to get him in his quarantine. Like he's already here. So there might be a chance that he still plays.
yeah,
Which, in my opinion, that might be a good thing for the Vikings because that means they don't have to play Chase Daniel, and we know how that goes if you look at our past. But
right.
on the Vikings injury report today, Cameron Dantzler did not practice with the concussion. Obviously, I want to say that might be good news that it's showing up as a concussion. That neck, it looked like it was a scary neck injury when he went off the field, and it looked like it was an extremely scary thing, and it sounds like Mike Zimmer has faith that he's going to be okay, and there's a chance that he even plays on Sunday. So Cameron Dantzler did not practice with a concussion today. Mark Fields with the chest with the punctured lung did not practice today, and Holton Hill also did not practice. Dan Chizina and Harrison Hand were both limited today, while CJ Ham and Adam Thielen were both full participants. Going over to the Lions, their injury report is a little bit more lengthy than ours. I'll just highlight some of the bigger names. Taylor Decker, their starting tackle, did not practice with a back injury. Kenny Golladay has a hip injury, and he did not practice. I know there's been some speculation on him not playing, which would probably be a bonus for our secondary with kind of the play they.
Lions media said he's going to be out.
Yeah, which I think is going to be a good thing because our secondary is extremely banged up as well. But other than that, TJ Hawkinson was limited. Desmond Trufant was limited. Danny Shelton was limited. I just kind of want to dive into this game right away because I'm ecstatic to watch this game. We're going to get to watch Adrian Peterson, and I don't know if there's anything that has been like official on this yet or not, but I'm somewhat scared that we just had our offensive line that had their best performance of the year, and they're going to have to go up against Everson Griffin in a revenge game. I don't know if that's confirmed, if he's playing yet or not, but obviously they acquired him. Is that 2 weeks ago? And they had that like buffer time period with COVID. And this is the week he's eligible to return. The only thing that would capitalize this, actually, Kyle Slaughter made the news today. He was working out with the Bears today because it sounds like Trubisky's going to miss some time. But I think that would kind of be the cherry on top if Kyle Slaughter was the starting quarterback of this team, because Vikings, I honestly think with Adrian Peterson, Everson Griffin, and Kyle Slaughter managing that Detroit team, or running that Detroit team, I legitimately think there's a good portion of this fan base that would be cheering for the Detroit Lions instead of the Vikings.
Well, there's
because
already going to be that because there's so
that's
many
true,
people
because of the
they think,
draft.
yeah, because they're like, oh, well, we got to pick high enough to get a guy like Justin Fields or to get a guy like Zach Wilson, who, again, we love, but I'm not going to root against the Vikings. That way we can get him. I'm going to hope Boise State beats him this week and he drops in the draft. Like, I think that
Yeah.
he's, super talented. But, Jack, I will, you seem excited to get into this game. You forgot to mention the biggest name of them all. This is the Jayon Curse revenge game.
Oh,
Even though
yeah.
I don't know how much he's seeing the field in Detroit, I'm assuming about the same he was in Minnesota.
I will quote him. Someone tweeted at him and asked him, because he said, I don't know what he said exactly, but someone said, clap back at him and said, do you even play? And he said, you'll see on this date. And it was the date that the Vikings played Detroit. So
Detroit's
what is his gripe? They didn't do anything wrong by him just because he drove into a construction zone drunk with a gun in his car. That's on Zimmer. Like,
well, I think that the unhappiness was just like, I think he saw Anthony Harris kind of get his big break and get franchise tagged and all that. And I think he kind of, I don't want to speak for a player. There could be some jealousy there where it's like, why didn't I get that shot to stout next to Harrison Smith in Mike Zimmer's defense, and then I could be the guy who's getting all the attention. And now it just kind of seems like he's a bitter guy in Detroit who isn't seeing the field much. But maybe Matt Patricia, that evil genius. I hate Matt Patricia with a fiery passion, and it's just because he wears a pencil in his ear whenever he uses a laminated play calling sheet. Like, that's the dumbest thing. It's blatantly just to make you look like a whiz kid.
I was gonna say, like, what an intellectual move.
Yeah, like, I can't remember why, but I had some joke lined up where I was gonna take off my glasses and I was gonna put on my old glasses and say that they were my smart people glasses. And like, I don't remember what that joke was set up for. I set it up like a week ago and I don't remember why, but like,
it still works.
It's the dumbest thing. And maybe that's been his play all year. He was like, we're gonna be a middle of the pack team, and then we're gonna play Minnesota, and we're gonna put Jayon Carlson, and he's gonna get 5 interceptions.
Yeah.
And he's gonna go on to tie Paul Krause's record for interceptions or whatever. And like, he's just gonna blow everybody away. Like, what are you doing? So Jayon Carlson, I hate when
I will say he did make some very big plays for us last year in the Dallas game.
Wasn't it the Lions game on 4th down where he stopped Hawkinson, or am I just making that up?
I know the Denver game was a big one too.
It was
the
Denver. It was, I think.
Fant.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
And I loved Jayon Carlson. I was a big supporter of, like, put him at the other linebacker position. He's a big, tall guy. Like,
that's the problem with him, though, right? He doesn't really fit anywhere. It's not like Harris's fault that his growth spurt didn't stop at the right time, and he turned into this weird mix between a safety, a nickel corner, and a linebacker.
Well, and he fits in like a big nickel package, but like, you don't
especially
run big
against a
nickel.
tight end.
Exactly, you don't run that full time. There are some times where it's just like, look, we want to have 3 legitimate linebackers out there. Or, look, we want to play legitimate coverage, and we want to have all of our corners out there. He just kind of fit in such a niche spot, and I loved him. I hate that he's so bitter. I hate that he apparently hates all Vikings fans and everything to do with the state of Minnesota. And like you said, maybe some of it's because a Minnesota cop found him driving drunk with a gun in his car. I don't know what
who hasn't been there? I mean, that was that's why I was late to join the Zoom.
Right, that's why you were late to join the Zoom. You had some drunk gunning to do, but
it's the way things. We like to get down on Vikings territory.
There it is. Jack, we'll start with you. Give me a matchup that you're looking forward to, and then Joe, you can jump in after that, and you can give me your matchup, man.
Yeah, I think honestly, there's aspects of this team it's probably going to start to be reoccurring a little bit over the next couple of weeks, but there's just so many different, not necessarily even matchups, but it's just players on the Vikings that I'm keeping an eye on. And last week I picked for my game ball, I picked DJ Wanham, and this is another week where I'm excited to watch DJ Wanham because he's kind of been labeled as the next Andre Patterson project, if you will, or like we said last week, he was more of a raw, talented guy that, like we said, has a lot of abilities to rush the passer. And we saw it last week when he got after Aaron Rodgers, like his ability to never give up on a play. Like that was more of a coverage sack, but he didn't give up and he got there and made the play. Obviously, he's one of those guys that both him and Ifeadi Odenigbo are intriguing to me because you're going to have Danielle Hunter coming back next year. And I want to say this is the rest of this season. It's almost an audition for each of them. Like who wins that spot? Sure, they could go out and draft another young pass rusher, maybe find someone. I think the Vikings historically have found some pretty good ones in free agency as well. But I just that those two players, I think pass rushers are so important at the NFL level, especially now with how it's becoming a pass first league. I want to see who steps up and takes that role because, I mean, if DJ Wanham can turn into a Danielle Hunter 2.0, that would be crazy for this defense, and it's going to help out that secondary and the back end of things as well. And I was going to say Kenny Golladay. I was excited to see him and see who we have on corner, but that matchup might not happen. But I'm still going to be watching Jeff Gladney because I've said this probably every week as well, but Jeff Gladney, I know he's gotten burnt in coverage. I know Mike Zimmer absolutely gave him an earful last week after it was either the first or second Devontae Adams touchdown. But the physicality that he plays with excites me. I've said it all along in the draft coverage that we've done as well. I need physical corners on this team, in my opinion. I think that's one of the most important. Obviously, coverage is important too, but I think that's an area where Zimmer can teach that aspect a little bit more, and they can continue to grow that aspect. You can't teach a cornerback to be willing to come flying down and run support and absolutely crack somebody, and he has that ability. So
I think he's still the best cornerback in the entire NFL, right?
At least he was a week or two ago. I guess I haven't checked on that in PFF, but I know he was the best run coverage cornerback in the league after week. Was that after the Atlanta week? Maybe
I'm not
100%.
It's like Antoine Winfield all over again.
Yeah, and I've compared the two a couple times on the show as well. Obviously, he's not there in the coverage side of things yet, but it's fun watching him come downfield and make hits. But not trying to go too long, I'll switch over to the offensive side of the ball. I think this is another week where we're back in a dome. I think Cousins is going to have a little bit of a bounce back game, and I think we're going to see more of just the reasons to be excited for this football team for next year, whether that's not this year. And I think kind of going off what you guys were saying, like I am becoming more and more of a Zach Wilson advocate, but that doesn't necessarily mean I think the Vikings need to draft him and start him right away next year. I still have some faith left in Kirk Cousins as well. We've seen him perform the last 2 seasons. He played very well, and the 10 interceptions is it's a diamond in the rough this year. You don't see that out of Kirk Cousins. Some of those mistakes are not his fault, but I think getting a younger, mobile, gunslinging quarterback in to learn behind Kirk Cousins, and then whether Kirk Cousins goes off next year and he continues to earn that spot in this offense or he doesn't, you're going to be handing the keys over to a pretty shiny looking offense when you have Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, a potentially rebuilt offensive line, and not to mention one of the best running backs in the NFL. So there's a lot of pieces that the Vikings have gotten right this year, and there's a lot of injuries on that defense, but there are a lot of players to watch as the season progresses and get our eyes on 2021 rather than look ahead like we were talking about a little bit earlier about playoffs this year, which still very well could happen. But I think where I'm positioning, where I'm watching these games, I'm trying to tune in and watch these individual players and just watch them rather. And I'll still do it on the all 22 as well and go back and watch it there. But there's a lot of young talent on this team, and I think that we are set up in a good spot for the future of this franchise.
Absolutely. Joe, who are you looking forward to watching on Sunday, man?
Well, yeah, I mean, Dalvin Cook, obviously, it'll be interesting to see the Vikings game plan because the Lions defense is relatively atrocious against the run. I think they're 27th in the league in regards to the rush touchdowns they've allowed, in 25th in total touchdowns. The red zone defense is 26th. Their third down defense is 27th. So they get run on a lot. They're the only really decent top 10 numbers they have as a defense is the number of passes attempted against them and the number of completions made against them, which is 9th. But other than that, they're really pedestrian in their pass offense as well. So, I expect to see more Dalvin, but I would just for the sake of looking forward and maybe making a run for the playoffs, I do want to see more out of the passing offense. I want to see more play action. I want to see Cousins getting out of the pocket more. I want to see what Justin Jefferson and Thielen can do against Trufant and the other corner whose name I cannot pronounce. But especially when it comes to how bad they've been in the red zone, just getting Kyle Rudolph more involved. And then I've really, I know that he's emerged and tight end numbers aren't the most flashy numbers. So seeing, back-to-back games with over 50 yards from Irv Smith Jr. is technically really good for a tight end, especially considering the numbers they were getting out of the tight end position all season. I think that was more than almost like 80% of what Rudolph had all season. But I do want to see more from Irv Smith Jr. I wonder, I've written a lot about the label that Gary Kubiak has as a 2 tight end guy. And I think people had this misconception that historically that meant that he had 2 tight ends who got significant amounts of targets. And that's never really been the case. He just runs a lot of heavy personnel with 2 or 3 tight ends, but he traditionally has 1 tight end who gets 80% of the targets. I want to see that transition from Rudolph to Irv Smith Jr. Outside of the red zone, obviously, but with Rudolph getting up there in years and maybe being gone after this season, that would be something worth building and looking towards. And I also think that's kind of a vulnerability that they can take advantage of against the Lions. My question is to you guys is, if there's any team that has really had Zimmer's number in the NFC North outside of the Bears at home, who I'll tell you this really quickly. I Kyle Rudolph on my podcast, Morning Joe's, and he was really the first ex-player that I'd had on the team or on the show, and I expected him to give me football answers because my co-host Joe Oberle's had a press pass forever, and he always says, like, it's not really worth getting current players on because they'll just give you, like, those football answers, like, why'd you lose? Well, we tried really hard, but it wasn't enough, and what about, like, that kind of stuff. And so I asked him, because it was before the Bears game, I was like, why do you guys struggle in Soldier Field? And his answer literally was, and I'll clean it up on your show, he goes, every time we get off from the hotel, we take the bus to Soldier Field, we'll look at each other and say, we're going to F this up. That was his answer. They openly talked about it. Like, it's Soldier Field with bad juju. But the Lions have seemed to perform disproportionately well against Zimmer. And that's been predominantly, I think, a Stafford thing. And so I do worry a little bit about this game if Stafford is able to play. Not that I'm wishing COVID on anybody, but yeah, I mean, I thought he already went through this thing and his wife got all mad about the league and his kids getting teased because they were like lepers or whatever. So it seems like he's going through it again. But I think the Vikings have a very good chance to win this game. I mean, the Lions have played some of the similar opponents. They got shellacked by the Colts. I think that it's a very winnable game, Stafford or not, but I think it's like all these games going to come down to Dalvin Cook and this offense really, controlling time of possession and, having high efficiency in the red zone and converting to touchdowns instead of field goals.
Yeah, I think that I'm surprised nobody name dropped this. I want to see where Everson Griffin is on their field. It seems as if for a pass rusher, it's not like he needs to learn the system. All right, if you want to teach him how you call stunts and then throw him out there, because most of the time it is see quarterback, get quarterback. If they run the ball, you try and get guy with ball pretty much. And
that's what's funny about the Ngakoue thing. So everyone's like, well, he's got to learn the system. I'm like,
no, he doesn't.
Doesn't he just have to beat the guy in front of him and tackle the quarterback?
But I'm excited to see, because we see this with Chicago a lot. They don't want to put Khalil Mack. Maybe they do. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to speak for him, but like, they usually put Khalil Mack against Riley Reif, not Brian O'Neill. And we've seen Reif struggle with Khalil Mack. Everson is not Khalil Mack, but do we see Everson lineup? Is he going to be rotational? We know he's in game shape. He played last year. He was on Dallas this year. It's not like he was a free agent that just got signed and they don't know how he is. He's been playing in Dallas, and I think he's been playing decently well. Maybe he doesn't have the stats to bring it up, but I want to see how much he plays, and when he's out there, I think they're going to throw him up against Riley Reif, because historically he has been the weaker of our 2 tackles. Now, I always joke whenever we go up against a good pass rush, I'm excited to see their pass rusher against Brian O'Neill in a showdown, because Brian O'Neill is my everything. He's my favorite Viking, him, Bradbury, and Eric Kendricks. They'll just they just get it done. And I'm excited to see Riley Reif, who is having a year where it's like, it almost feels like every time he pancakes somebody, or every time he makes a good zone block, or every time he just doesn't let Cousins get, assassinated, he's like kind of giving the middle fingers up to the front office. Like, you make me take a pay cut? Are you kidding me? You made me take a pay cut? Do you want to see what I can do? Like, do you know how good I am at football? I'm getting paid, whether it's by you or not. He has another year on his deal. We could cut him after this season and no dead cap. He doesn't have the guaranteed money, but I think he's playing himself into like a 1 or 2 year restructure after this season, or an extension. And honestly, as of week, what are we in, 9? As of week 9, I'm all for it. I'm big time on the Wiley Leaf train. So I'm excited to see this offensive line and Everson Griffin. And then obviously, Michael Pierce opted out, so we can't even say that this defense was better with him. But this defense does seem susceptible to the run. I honestly don't have the stats pulled up. It's just like, who's our nose guard? Like, it's Jaleel Johnson?
Who's a 3? Isn't he a 3 tech technically?
Yeah, I think. But so. Like, he, I almost brought him up earlier whenever we were talking about Jalen Coast. I hate when players like look their names up on Twitter and then get into it with fans. Like, somebody said Jaleel Johnson hasn't been doing very good this year, and he responded and he was like, "Why don't you come do it then?" Like, and while it's funny, it's like, okay, but like, come on, you get paid a lot of money to do this, so like maybe
it comes with the territory.
Yeah,
I mean, I never liked that. I'm sure you guys gotten that as media members, where people are like, sure. Have you even played football, bro?
Oh yeah.
Do you?
I always have the people.
Do you make them?
I feel like people in the comments are always looking for mistakes too, rather than actually trying to read what you say. So I don't know. I definitely feel that I've learned personal perspective on this. Same thing I think I would do if I was in the NFL. Just kind of have to let it go. And I try not to even read comments anymore, because it's like, what's the point? Like, nothing good is going to ever come out of doing that. So
just had a long conversation on Bleacher Report with a small group of guys who follow our stuff. And one of them, I was essentially saying to these guys, "Did you even read the article?" And it was about Diggs again, because I've been writing about Diggs all the time. Just looking at his midway point in the season and whether or not him being the man extrapolated out into better numbers, Antonio Brown type numbers, which I think was the impetus for him wanting out of here in the first place. And I basically said, yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenon that we get where people read the headline, have a conclusion already, comment on it, but they don't realize the article actually supports what they're saying. But yeah, it would look gross if we and I think that's the point you're making with the players, is when you are kind of attacking the people who either directly or tacitly support you. It's not a good look for anybody.
Well, I mean, honestly, if you think about it, like the ESPN people probably have a deep wealth of football knowledge. But do you think Jaleel Johnson's name is going to get brought up on ESPN very frequently? Like, it's not. That's just not how, he's not that much of a style player. So the reason that I bring up our on defense and on nose guards and stuff, I'm most specifically, I'm excited to see Eric Kendricks, who has been playing at an elite level for the second year in a row. I want to see him and those linebackers and that defensive line shut down the running game. Obviously, Adrian Peterson is like it's the revenge game. This is going to be so exciting. DeAndre Swift, I think, is going to get most of the carries. So that's the matchup that you look at. It is going to be fun when Adrian Peterson comes into the game. I don't know if you guys remember 2017, Sam Bradford against the Saints, Monday Night Football. Adrian, is playing against us, and he was limited in what he did with them, but it was like every time he came in, they ran the ball. And I remember late in the game.
Oh, the season opener.
Yeah, the season opener. And
I rented a movie theater for that game.
That's insane. I fell asleep because it was the first week of the year, so I forgot that the first game is on at 7:30, and my fiance didn't wake me up. So I came in, and we're like halfway through the first, and I'm like, what the hell? But it's going to be exciting to see how the Vikings defense looks. I think even with all the injuries, Mike Zimmer has a chance to go 8-8 or 9-7 with this team, with all the injuries, with all the youth, opt-outs, neck surgeries, and just be able to say, I still got it. This is why I have a job. This is why we're not going after Eric Bieniemy. You guys have me. I still know my way around a defense. I still know how to coach up a defensive back, and I think he needs to. We're playing some very bad, well, not very bad, but we're playing some mediocre, average teams coming up, and I think he needs to have his team ready to go against everybody and playing at the same level consistently. Because I think if we lose a couple of these, he has a chance of losing the locker room. And if he loses that locker room, it'll show. I've seen bad team. The Jets are a bad team that I don't think Adam Gase has that locker room. Compare that to the Bengals, who are a bad team, but I think they're kind of buying into Zach Taylor. And, they're playing with a little bit of feistiness to them. And I don't just say that because I live in Cincinnati. But I don't know. That's just kind of the matchup I'm looking forward to. We're running a little long. I'm not going to speed things up, but I will just say I'm going to take that into consideration to try not to to ramble too much or anything. But let's talk about game balls. Joe, typically one of us does offense, one of us does defense. So we're going to give you the special teams game ball. You get to pick between Dan Bailey and Colquitt. I forget which Colquitt we have, but those are your. Thank you. Those are our two. Those are your two options for special teams player of the week, and that's obviously a joke. You can pick whoever you want because you are a special guest. Jack, do you have offense this week?
I do, yes. I had won him last week.
We will stick to the regular. I'll go defense, he'll go offense, and then Joe, you can just kind of pick anybody. I'm gonna kick us off here. I am gonna say I think this week's game ball goes to. Let's see. I have defense. I almost said Justin Jefferson because I'm really excited about Justin Jefferson this week. I think this week's game ball goes to Jeff Gladney. I think last week he was this close to getting that first interception off of Aaron Rodgers, and I would have been so happy for him. I want to see him get that first pick. I think no Galladay. I think he's going to be on I think they're playing sides a lot more this year, so it's not like he's going to be shadowing anybody, but I do think he's going to play physical. I hope the refs are letting him play this week because Gladney kind of does need to be allowed to be physical. And I think we're going to see him really just have a hell of a day. And I'm hoping he steps up and kind of, as I say, Zimmo needs to coach the defense well and show everybody why he is the coach. I think Gladney's going to have one of those days where it's like, this is why you drafted me in the first round. I'm gonna be really good. I want to see that talent just shine through. I want to see that physicality. I want to see him make plays in the run game, which I think is a given he's going to do. But, I'd like to see his coverage go up a little bit, and I think this is the week. Maybe no Matt Stafford, no top receiver. The top tight end is dinged up. I think this is the week we could see it. So give me Jeff Gladney for my game ball this week. Jack, I'll let you go next, and then Joe, you'll go last. So that way you can think about whether or not you're going to go offensive, defense, and everything. All right?
Yeah.
All right. I like the Gladney pick a lot, and to mention this to Joe, not sure if you caught the week. I'm on a hot streak with game balls a little bit, even though I said I gave my game ball post show last week to Eric Kendricks. I thought he played absolutely out of his mind, but I picked DJ Wanham before that. And Jordan kind of picked me up a little bit and said, you know what, I'm going to give my game ball post game to DJ Wanham. So I like trying to find little diamonds in the rough, and you're seeing it's actually going off of one of the points that you brought up earlier. And I had this idea before, so your point kind of helped this, but I think we're starting to see the emergence more of this player. And I think, first off, I'll start out by saying the Vikings are going to throw. I think they're going to try and do what they did last week where they control the clock. But Kirk Cousins is going to throw the ball more than 14 times, I think. I think that's a fair assumption to make with the weather or being inside and with how the weather was last week. And we're starting to see the emergence more and more. It seems like each week he's getting more and more involved in this offense. We wanted it to happen last year too. But give me Irv Smith Jr. finding his first touchdown in 2020. I think he's just one of those players where he's too talented to keep being hidden on this roster. And I'm not saying he's being hidden because he's starting to see more targets each week. But you have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen both playing at an elite level. You have Dalvin Cook playing behind you at an elite level. Get that tight end game going. I know on the show we always talk about this as well, but he's such a good tight end in between the 20s. He's more of an athletic tight end that I love Kyle Rudolph, but Kyle Rudolph has never really been that athletic tight end. He's so good in the red zone, and I'm fine with giving him those targets there. But in those quick tight end screen plays where we would throw it to Rudolph last year, get Irv Smith Jr. involved just a little bit more. I think he has too much talent. And I think this is the week where we might see him. Maybe he scores a touchdown. It's he mosses J-Ron Curse. But I like finding players like that. And I think Irv Smith Jr. we're starting to see that trajectory go up. And I think he's going to have a good game on Sunday.
Absolutely. And Joe, I'm gonna get to you here in just 1 second. I really think Irv Smith is we got to figure out if we love him or if we like him, because his contract will be coming up here in a year or two. And then there's a guy who I think might be in Vikings draft range, Kyle Pitts out of Florida.
He's
That's
a freak.
He is a freak, and it's like if he falls to us and we're sitting there, and maybe Wyatt Davis is gone, he's a guy I think we would maybe be considering. So I think I want to see, because this season does feel lost, even though it doesn't, if that makes sense. I'd like to see us try and get the ball to Irv Smith, like just scheming him the ball more and more as the weeks go on, to see what we have in him. Joe, sorry to postpone your game ball, but you have offense, defense, and special teams for the Vikings. Who you going with, man?
I'll take special teams, since you guys talked about a lot of different guys. I think, we didn't see Colquitt really even punt until midway through the third quarter against the Packers, and I think that's a good sign as to whether or not the game plan that Kubiak and company come up with is working, right? I mean, we saw in Seattle, I think one thing that Cousins deserves credit for, outside of that atrocious first pass interception in the second half, was the fact that they had these long, drawn-out, methodical drives to keep Russell Wilson and those three receivers off the field, right? And Chris Carson as well. I mean, I think they had 5 drives of 10 plays or more, which was the first time they've done that in a really, really long time. And so the less that we see Colquitt, the better. When it comes to Dan Bailey, like I said, this offense, especially if you're going by that game plan, you're taking a lot of time off the clock by the plan working, so you have to convert touchdowns as opposed to field goals. So I would say the less that we see Dan Bailey, also the better, outside of extra points. I think Mike Boone was the special teams player of the month in the NFC a month ago. He had a blocked punt. I would like to see something more in that regard, but really I've been hoping that KJ Osborne would break out a little bit more as the returner. I think we got really spoiled in Minnesota watching the Gophers guy, the little guy, Sherrills, return punts. He always seemed to turn nothing into at least a 10-yard return. He was really the best punt returner this team's ever had, and we haven't really had an answer since him, and really since Cordero Patterson in the kick return game. And so it looks like obviously KJ Osborne was specifically drafted for that role, and so I would like to see more from him in that regard, because again, we got spoiled, but I think we underestimated just how much those returns were impactful on Zimmer's game plan in regards to controlling field position, flipping field position, so on and so forth. And so I'd be really happy to see a decent return or a return for a touchdown, either in the kick return or punt return game from Osborne. But other than that, I think Cousins needs to come out and have a big game. I mean, like as we said, the offensive line had the top 3 grades from PFF, so they're performing well. And my entire reputation is basically gambled on the fact that Cousins can be a great, not elite, but great quarterback if he has the protection or the time needed. And so all the tools are in place. I've never really liked the label of Cousins only doing well when things are perfect around him, because things have never been perfect around him in his entire career. They never really are in the NFL, but especially when it comes to they had the 27th ranked offensive line in 2019, and 2018 was not great either. So arguably it was worse. So I think that we really need to see Cousins come out and have a big game to kind of shake off these early season interceptions and establish that this offense can be the powerhouse that I think we've seen smatterings of, either from the run game or the pass game, but not one just dominant game in which they just run up the score. And I'll give a honorable mention to Wuhan, China, for the COVID that may keep Stafford on the sideline, which is an awful joke, but it's what I'm known for.
No, it's okay. We like it. I do find it funny that, one, you kind of did the anti-game ball of like Colquitt and Dan Bailey, aside from extra points, keep your asses on the sideline. Let's see this offense cook. I like that. And I also like, it's a bold strategy. to give a game ball to an entire nation. But
technically it's a province, but
that's true.
I'm trying to grow our international audience.
It's so funny. I made some dumb joke a couple weeks ago about how we had a huge Asian demographic here at Load the Box, and like it's not true at all. Obviously, like it's Ohio and Minnesota. That's our demo. But like that's funny that you say that. So yeah, I think we'll ex-nay the fantasy talk a little bit. We'll ex-nay the gambling talk a little bit. We'll just kind of dive straight into skull predictions, who we think is going to win this game. I think this game really comes down to, like Joe mentioned earlier, is this team capable of playing Detroit not like a mediocre team, but playing Detroit the same level they played last week, where it's we score on every drive we get in the first half. We, come out, we hold the Green Bay's offense with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. We hold them a couple times in the second half. Are we capable of doing that again this week, even though we're dinged up in the secondary and even though, it's unrealistic for Dalvin to do what he did last week on a consistent basis? And I'm going to be cautiously optimistic here, and I'm going to say I think they can. I don't think Zimmer is going to be a happy guy in practice for the rest of the year unless, they make the playoffs and win a playoff game. Then you might see him crack a smile or two, but maybe. And I think he's going to be riding these guys. I don't think he's going to be thrilled because I think he realizes that he's got a young team and he can't be as loose as he's been because he's had the same defense for so long. He can't be loose and jokey with those guys. He's got to kind of strike the fear of Mike Zimmer into these young guys and let them know, hey, you make a mistake, you pay for it, there are consequences. And I think he's going to have that defense even banged up, even with, I don't know if you guys saw this story, Adam Thielen getting ready to come play defensive back for him. I think he's going to have him ready to come out, maybe play a Staffordless Lions team. I do think the Vikings offense gets rolling early and often, and I think this is a game where the Vikings win. I'll go 20. No, it's unlikely we'll score 28 2 weeks in a row. I'll go 33-23. We'll say we win by 10 points exactly. I think this is a good win for the Vikings, and then we go play Jacksonville, and we beat them too. And then it's the playoffs.
Is it Jacksonville or Chicago?
It's Chicago.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Then I think it's Carolina after that, then maybe Jacksonville.
The dreaded Chicago at Soldier Field on Monday night game. That might be the most dreaded.
That's like 3 signs of the Vikings apocalypse right there.
While I'm on my honeymoon.
What?
So, yeah, on my honeymoon, Monday Night Football. It's gonna be bad. It's gonna ruin my whole week. Like my wedding.
Did you get married already?
No, I get married next Friday, and then go on my honeymoon that Saturday, and then.
Oh, dude, I gotta get congratulations, man. You should send me the registry, and I'll send you some.
I think that bottle of I guess we were technically on the air when we were talking about that bottle of Chad Greenway vodka. I think that would be a perfect gift, especially with my backdrop back here.
I'll definitely do it as long as the next time I'm on the show you get rid of that creepy little man in the corner. He's been eyeing me the entire time.
His name is Ricardo.
Okay, that makes sense.
And he's a big Vikings fan, all right? Also, I didn't make the joke a few weeks ago for Halloween. I put a skeleton behind the Vikings to represent the death that was lurking around this team. And I guess it still applies because of the whole, you look at our defense and just the amount of injuries and COVID opt-outs that we have on it. So, I think I'll leave him there. What'd you say?
I said punctured lungs.
Yeah, right.
When does that happen?
Guys are getting stepped on like they're playing Indomitian Sue. But Joe, I'll let you go next. I'll let you pick this game. You do have to give a score. It is tradition. And then Jack, I'll let you go last, man.
I think it'll be God, there's so many variables that we don't know at this point. So I'm gonna assume that Stafford will play, but he'll be out without Galladay. I think it'll be an efficient game in regards to scoring, but I don't think it'll be a barn burner. Divisional games are always hard. I would say the Vikings will end up winning 27-13.
That's good. If
this that's very close to what I have written down right now.
If this defense,
I saw it. There's a mirror over your shoulder.
If this defense holds the Lions to 13 points with or without Galladay, if we hold anybody to 13 points, I'll I'll be jumping for joy. That's a good
That'll
game.
set Vikings world on fire.
Oh,
So it's a little bit of
absolutely.
wishful thinking on
I mean,
my
it's
behalf.
legitimately going to tone into like the Bloods and the Crips with the File Zimmo versus Keep Zimmo crowd on
Well,
Twitter.
you know me. All you got to do is find a construction area, and I'll be there, slightly drunk with my pistol.
There it
Apparently.
is. I hope you're on my team. I'm on Team Zimmo still, but Jeff Hawthorne in the chat, 21-17 Vikings win. I don't like everybody's going Vikings. It makes me sad. Jack, shoot me right in the head with some pessimism. Tell me the Lions are going to blow us out.
I am not. I think
Dang
the
it.
Vikings are going to get their first win at home. It's kind of an interesting aspect. And I think you can kind of speak on that with it being the COVID, with it being 2020 and so weird. No fans in US Bank Stadium has affected this team. And I think they're going to kind of get their feet underneath them a little bit after that win in Green Bay. I mean, all those rookies, that all these young kids that got their first, I mean, I shouldn't even say young kids. When's the last time we won in Lambeau Field? It's been a couple years. So I think that's going to give the team some juice. And I think they're going to go in US Bank Stadium and win this with a, I'm not going to say it could be, I think it's going to be a close game, especially if Matthew Stafford plays, because he always seems to be just hanging around in the fourth quarter. He always seems to be like within a 2-score game. And I think it's going to be a fairly, it's not close. It's an 11-point spread, what I have written down. But I wrote down right at the beginning of the show, I have the Vikings winning 27-16.
Wow.
All right.
You
All
Price
right.
is righted me.
Yeah. I have it written down in my notebook. I was like thinking
$201. Oh, and 1 penny, not dollars, but yeah. I like the picks. Again, makes me anxious that we have faux people saying the Vikings will win.
It's never a good sign.
It's never good. I'm telling you, man. As soon as you get that little bit of hope in your stomach or heart or whatever you want to call it, it gets eviscerated. And for some reason, every time I say the Vikings are going to lose, it seems like we win, but when I pick us to win, we lose. So maybe I'm just an idiot and I've never played football. So
well,
I
I've been trying to tell you that for years. I just didn't know how to phrase it.
All right. I don't appreciate it. Just kidding around. Yeah, I think that's all. Joe, I'll pass it to you to give me some some final thoughts for the week, and then I'll give mine, and then Jack, you can get us ready to run through some walls and tell us Skull.
Yeah, I think that, like I said in the beginning of the show, I think it's, I will say, I do pride myself on trying to hold myself accountable for things that I say or write about when I'm wrong. I don't think there's enough of that in our industry, and it's always been kind of a pet peeve of mine that people just from one week to the next kind of paper mache over things that they said that were declarative. I really gave Zimmer a rough time this offseason, and when the season first started, you touched on something in regards to the locker room giving up on Zimmer, all the Jets, and that was the impression that I had gotten in those first 2 games. I mean, they were just didn't appear to be ready to play, and everyone blamed it on the lack of a preseason, but other teams had no preseason. Granted, we have a lot of youth on this team, but I really think that there's something to be said of what Zimmer's been able to do with this young patchwork defense. I mean, I think we were on our 7th cornerback, their 7th on the depth chart at the end of that Packers game, and he's been able to put together and cobble together wins against NFC powerhouse teams, and I think he does deserve credit for that. Is he a perfect coach? No, but I should hold him to the same standard that I hold Cousins to, which is I don't think Zimmer maybe is the guy that can beat in the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl one of these younger offensive minded head coaches. He seems to be outclassed when that happens, but at the same time, if we held every coach the Vikings ever had to that standard, then we would say Bud Grant sucks. You know what I mean? Because he never won. So I think he does deserve credit for what he's done. The fact that all of us here are picking the Vikings to win, when after that, especially after that Falcons game, it was there were people in Vikings media, newspaper people, headlines were literally fire everybody, period. So I do want to give him credit for that. I think we are seeing parts of this team coalescing into things that are making this season, if they don't make the playoffs, into maybe 1 year of growing pains and then another window of opportunity. And Zimmer, to be honest, Zimmer and Spielman kept that window of opportunity open a lot longer than you are. I mean, I'm older than you guys, but we're used to getting embarrassed in the NFC Championship game, falling apart the next season, then taking 5-6 seasons to rebuild. And that's not really been the case during this era. And so I just want to give credit where credit is due. And I'm excited to see what happens. And that's worth noting, I think, in all this craziness in 2020.
I'll pose you one question. Mike Zimmer or Eric Bieniemy? Who would
Um,
you take as your coach?
to be completely honest with you, this is going to completely go against what I just said, but I do think that they do need to make a change. I do think that there's 4 or 5 head coaches in NFL history who won a Super Bowl after the first 5 years they were with a franchise, and all 5 of those head coaches were Hall of Fame coaches, and all of the quarterbacks on those teams were Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I think that we've seen the limit of what Zimmer can do. I think that they gave him the keys to this franchise. They got a new stadium, the state of the art place out in Egan. He got every free agent he wanted. They redid how the NFL does contracts to get Cousins here as the final piece. He got every corner that he wanted early in the draft, and the peak of it really outside of that NFC Championship game was 8-7-1 and 10-6 with Sheldon Richardson coming in after Cousins, so on and so forth. So I do think that he is capable of making the playoffs, making runs. I think he'll ever win a Super Bowl? No. So I do think you have to go with somebody who will give you that opportunity. That doesn't guarantee the regular season success we've seen from Zimmer, but again, I give him credit, but I also don't think he's the guy that's going to get us over the hump, to be
Yeah,
completely honest
so
with you.
that's where I'll go with my little final thought here, and that is that I think same thing, but about Cousins. I think Cousins is a good, not great quarterback. I don't think he's destined for Canton. I think, and I say this a lot on the show, he is going to be one hell of a Monday Night Football announcer whenever he retires. He's funny, he's quirky, he knows what he's talking about. He's a smart kid, smart guy. He's like 12 years older than me, but he's a smart guy. He just, I just don't see him winning a Super Bowl, and I think that Mike Zimmer could Pete Carroll this bit and kind of get that young gunslinging quarterback. Maybe it's a guy like Zach Wilson. Maybe it's a guy like De'Aaron King. Maybe it is the pride of the University of Cincinnati, UC, go Bearcats. Oh my gosh, I forgot his first name. Ritter, Desmond Ritter. I don't know who the answer is, but I think if you give Zimmer the right pieces, I do think he needs to be open to throwing the ball because it's 2020. But I think if he could, I think we've seen him get a little kinky, if you will, with his defense. Ooh. And I think it's time for him to let the offense be a modern day offense, even if that may put his defense in jeopardy sometimes. But that's kind of where I'll leave things. Is I love Cousins to death. I do think Cousins could take us to the playoffs this year. There's a chance we're playing in Lambeau come January for round 3 of that matchup, and I like our chances against Green Bay again. I'll be honest with you, but I don't know. It's just it's going to be a complicated year to talk about Cousins because of how bad he was versus how good I think he's going to end up looking. So that's where I'll leave things.
We got to hope he plays well, because if they have any chance to get a guy like Bieniemy, they have to have an attractive enough roster. You don't want a guy to say, well, I don't want to go to Minnesota because they're locked into Cousins with this $45 million guaranteed 2022 situation. So I'm not going to go there because the pieces aren't what I want, especially a guy coming from Kansas City.
Well, if he plays bad, then he could always in his interview be like, hey, I'll coach you guys. I'll come here and I'll run the flashy offense. I'm not running it with Cousins. Cousins isn't going to be able to do the things that I want him to do. So we have to cut him, and then you cut him and you have to eat the dead cap next year, but you don't have to eat it in 2022 because it doesn't become fully guaranteed or whatever. It's a complicated contract structure. But on that note, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Jack, I'm going to let you give us our final thoughts, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I don't really have too much tonight. Like you said, like the optimism levels are gone, but I do think the Vikings are going to go and they're going to get their 3rd win of the season, get to 3-5. And like we just kind of talked about, I mean, it's tough going into Soldier Field, especially on Monday night. It's not an easy place to play. But this Vikings team, it's a pretty much, there's a lot of new faces on this team that haven't experienced that yet. And there is a chance that this team starts to go on a run. If we're sitting at 5-5 after the next 2 weeks, people are going to be, or not 3 weeks. I can't even do simple math anymore, but
2020,
there is a legitimate chance that this team could go on a run. Either way, there's something to be excited for because there's so much to look forward to in 2021, kind of like we were talking about earlier. If you're one of those fans that are kind of, you're done with the season, you've given up, kind of do. And I'm not in that boat because I still think there is a slim chance of making the playoffs. I'm not going to get my hopes up for it, but just try and focus on some of these younger players. Because like I said, there's so much talent on this roster, so many young players. Obviously, if Dancer plays this week, you have Dancer and Gladney. They're could legitimately be looking at our next two corners for the future right there. And I'm very hopeful that Mike Hughes can figure out his neck injury. There's a lot of weird things that happen to this Vikings team, and I think 2020 just kind of sums that up perfectly. I mean, we just gave up 22 points to Aaron Rodgers at home without Anthony Barr, without a legitimate nose tackle and a legitimate three technique, without an established pass rusher, and with probably one of the most banged up secondaries in all of football. So that should say something about how Mike Zimmer has his team ready to play. I know it's a little bit added incentive to go into Green Bay, hated rival, and I think the Vikings need to continue playing with that chip on their shoulder. We haven't really seen Kirk Cousins that you like that version that we saw after the playoff win last year. I want to see that fire, bring that fire, because that's the only thing that is going to get this team into the playoffs. If everyone around them is playing like that, still don't have my hopes up too high because, like I said, there's a lot of injuries and stuff like that, a lot of pieces missing, but just there's 9 games left, and all I can really say is buckle up because it could be an extremely interesting ride. And what else would you expect as a Vikings fan? And as always, I'll leave you with the Skol.